A very good afternoon to you all in this hot and humid climate in Calcutta. I am Anumita Chakraborty, the General Secretary of Bengal Volunteers, and speaking to Mr. Sachithananthan, the founder of the Shiv Senai in Sri Lanka. We are moving to Belumad at the moment in a car, and we are quite interested to know what's going on in Sri Lanka at the moment, what's the future, and what are going to be the duties and the responsibilities of the Hindus living there. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. I am very glad to be with the
Bengal
viewers
Volunteers,
of this channel. I am so happy that I am in Calcutta and I am speaking to all of you.
So when we are talking at this time in Calcutta, Sri Lanka is going through perhaps the worst crisis in the last 3 decades. What's the matter in entirety? Can you say in brief?
Sri Lanka is facing a humanitarian crisis now. It is not a political crisis, it's not an economic crisis, it's not a religious crisis, it's not a race crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis. Human beings in Sri Lanka are facing the worst in the post-independent history. It happened in Bihar, in Bengal during the British periods, the famine of Bengal. Now there is a famine in Sri Lanka. They are trying to solve it through very many ways, but they are failing. They are failing badly because they have made too many enemies. The international situation is also very bad, not as it was during the previous few years. Now internationally also production levels of primary level production has gone down, fuel production has gone down, natural resources extraction has gone down because of the COVID. Now this Sri Lankans should have realized a few years ago and started working hard to produce from that resource-rich country. 2 monsoons, northeast monsoon and the southwest monsoon. They bring plenty of water, and the western Ghats of India extends into Sri Lanka, mountainous regions. So paddy fields, rivers, some 26 major rivers and about 150 minor riverlets and all that. So what is not available, and there is a sea around us, some 1,800 kilometers of sea coast, and 3 to 4 times the size of Sri Lanka's land, the exclusive economic zone of Sri Lanka. So what is not available in Sri Lanka? What is not available in Sri Lanka?
But there's a huge crisis, an enormous crisis, I think.
The crisis is enormous because of the attitude of the citizens of that country. They don't want to work. They don't want to produce.
And what's the role of the government, sir? What has the government done in all these years?
The people have been electing government based on a fanaticism, religious fanaticism, language fanaticism.
What sort of religious fanaticism, linguistic?
The Buddhists want to rule the country. They say this is a Buddhist country. There's a Sinhalese country. So this fanaticism has ruined their economic future and put them into the most worst situation ever they had in post-independent era. They instead should have concentrated producing from the land and the sea. Enough. Never in our historical times we imported anything except for some fancy items. All the major primary requirements like agricultural products, fisheries products, food, clothing and shelter were locally available and locally met. Now we are depending on it for everything. And so they called it a dollar crisis. It's a very unfortunate situation. It's not a dollar crisis. It's a lack of production crisis.
So
If you produce using your own resources, the natural resources through human resource, then this problem will not exist.
So we have heard from the mainstream media that what we have learned from in India that the extra burdens or the extra reliance on China has created a huge problem which crisis. Do you agree to it? The Sri Lanka's dependence on extra dependence on China. Do you think so?
No, you see, when you don't produce enough, when you want to keep yourself updated with the latest technology, with the latest, consumerism, then naturally you have to go to somebody else to beg, to borrow, if not steal. So naturally, if you ask somebody, they don't give you, go to the next person. And China found it very opportunistic to come and land into a situation. They were doing it in many other places. They ruined the economy of many countries.
Like in Pakistan and every other place.
Yes, Pakistan, they ruined. I don't want. This is not an anti-Chinese platform. I'm talking about Sri Lanka.
We are just critically examining all the factors. For that reason, the
Sri Lankan, the fault of the Sri Lankan governments were to depend on foreigners, foreign aid, foreign support. They did not think that the human resources in their own country, about some 2 crores of people. 2 crores is 200 million.
So what's going to be the future, sir? I think that's today in the newspaper I just read, many people have read, that almost there is a national emergency in the Hindu country in Sri Lanka.
20 million people can, if they work for 2-3 hours a day, producing something, that is enough to make the country a beautiful, a paradise.
A self-reliant.
So much of land, so much of sea, so much of rivers, so much of monsoonal contribution, so much of, it's it's a paradise on earth.
So in this crisis, what's the situation of the Tamilians or the Hindu specially dwelling there?
This is their problem. The basic problem in Sri Lanka is that the Buddhists do not want the Hindus there. The Sinhalese don't want the Tamils there. The Sinhalese and the Buddhists say this island belongs to the Sinhalese and the Buddhists, not to anybody else. And their first major problem they have identified is the Tamil Hindu problem. And they have been working on it for the last 75 years. The moment they got freedom, they did not think about production. They thought about the Tamil Hindus who came recently from India to work in the tea plantations. They disfranchised them. What a pity. They are working in the plantations. They are bringing the most of the revenue at that time for the country, tea, rubber, coconut, and you disfranchise a billion people.
So didn't the same notion mature in the 1970s and 80s that led to the rise of secessionist movements like the LTT?
In the 50s, they thought they are a ethnocentric single ethnic group as Sinhalese, and they brought the Sinhalese only act. Again, they made a blunder. This is a fanaticism. This is an aggressive fanaticism of the Sinhalese Buddhists, which made this country to this day. They are suffering because of those seeds that they sowed post the leaders. The rise of LTT, you asked about the rise of the Hindu nationalism and consequently the violent formations. It is because it's a reactionary thing. It's not a positive thing. It's not that Hindus wanted to take to arms. It's not that Tamils wanted to take to arms. They only wanted to defend themselves from an atrocious terrorist government, or repeatedly terrorist governments. So this is their problem. They are facing a situation which they created. Now let us not go into the past. Let us go into the future. I'm sorry. let us go into the future.
So what's
Any government wanting to run the country should persuade the people to sit down and produce something. Produce something, anything. Some of it could be exported, some of it could be used locally. The prices will go down. If you have plenty, the prices will go down. If you have plenty, you could export. There will be no dollar crisis. What we need today, because of modernization from outside, is fuel. Carbon-based fuel. Then the technology upgradation. See, consumer products are not necessary. We can produce it. But technology is getting upgraded every day. Nobody can match the growth which happening in this past decade or past 2 decades. So you have to, the citizens should enjoy the benefits of such upgradation of technology, mostly in the area of electronics. Then you have to import a lot of things. So that requires some money or dollar. If you have plenty of things to export, then you can import all of them and have excess in your. You need not. I am telling you, Sri Lanka is going through this humanitarian crisis because of its own doings.
So hasn't the government concentrated on the upgradation of the technological factors?
They are continuously doing. That is what they are in this place. They want to have the best of technology, but they don't want to produce adequately enough to buy the technology. The technology is priced. Does not come free.
So the technological advancement in Sri Lanka, what has been, what is second best?
We are.
Is it part of begging?
We are technologically equivalent to most developed countries. I am telling you, technologically, electronic technology, digital technology, we get the things immediately into our system. But that requires money. So that requires we have to import. We import the most beautiful cars in the world, and then we have no produce. We don't produce our own fuel, so we have to import the fuel. We have to import the cars. Why don't you make your cars? Why don't you explore the southern Indian Kaveri basin is full of fuel. About 10 kilometers away or 20 kilometers away, your water starts. There is fuel. You never think about it. You have fuel which you can explore.
Has your political party ever talked of this to the government?
Me?
You have talked to this to the government?
I have been telling this off and on, but I have become pessimistic because what I am talking about is on one track, what they are thinking is on another. They are talking about fanaticism, extremism, terrorism. I am talking about development, growth, humanitarian aspects of life. They are talking about racism, religious fanaticism. Religious leaders have no role in politics. See, the cardinal of the Catholic Church is going to the United Nations to complain against the government. His business is in the church, not on the forums, political forums. His business is to make the people of this country more spiritual, more disciplined, more civilized. So he has to go to the church to educate them, to correct them, to guide them. But he is going to the
nations,
international forums complaining against his government. He is not a religious leader.
So isn't organized religion too political?
It is politicized. Because of this, the Sinhalese Buddhist racism or fanaticism, all religions have become fanatics. And the international situation about Islam, they are very aggressive. Some of them are very aggressive.
In this case, what's the role of Islamic outfits in Sri Lanka amidst this movement?
They are making hay while sun shines. They are drying hay while sun shines. They are using every failure of this government to their advantage, so that they will make more. They will change the demography of the country. As one Sinhalese leader, Mr. Sambika Ranawake, puts, in about 20 years' time, there will be a Muslim president.
In Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka. He has written a book on that. The demography of the country is changing in favor of the Muslims, where they are producing children. They are converting. There is love jihad. They have taken over districts. 30 years ago, they were minority in a district. Now they have 2 districts in which they are majority. They are targeting a 3rd district.
So which are the districts? Can you name that plus?
Ampara district was a Muslim minority district. Now it's a majority district. Trincomalee district was a Tamil majority, Hindu majority district. Now it's a Muslim majority district. So Mannar is the 3rd district they are targeting to Islamize and make it a Muslim majority district.
Well, sir, according to you, when the Sinhalese Buddhists have been targeting the Tamil Hindus, the thirdly that emerged was of the Islamists, who have been going on with their own agenda relentlessly.
Yeah. This is why in 1990s, Baharam, LTT leader, sent most of the Muslims out of Tamil homelands. He knew in advance that these fellows are going to make it worse for the Tamils and the Hindus. So he pushed them out. So one day he put vehicles all over, and that was one of the recent mass movements of Muslims recently happened. Other one is in Burma, Rohingya. Before that it was in Sri Lanka. So
a huge mass movement.
Oh yeah. Lakhs of Muslims were displaced and put into camps. They were asked to go. Just overnight they were asked. Not because the Tamil Hindus liked it, but because they were making use of the opportunity to play with the fire. You can't just, they could not be tolerated. They came to a point where they could not be tolerated. Their presence could not be tolerated. So Kumaran decided, because he was facing on the other side the Buddhist Sinhala hegemony. So he said, I don't want to have 2 fronts, I will have only 1 front. And then he decided to, whether it is right or wrong is a different matter.
It's a matter of ethics.
It happened.
So let's put aside the ethics. We discuss the political situation.
What happened in Burma is right or wrong is not the matter. What happened is Burma is a result of Islamic extremism.
That means Sri Lanka is also in the grip of Islamic extremism at this moment.
That is why, I am telling you, in 2019, when Gotabaya got elected, the mandate given by the Sinhalese Buddhists was eliminate Muslim extremism. That was the only mandate, and he did not include any Muslim party in his cabinet. Contrary to his brother's previous experience of having Muslim supporters in the government, Gotabaya's government did not have any Muslim party.
Well, if I'm not wrong, the name is Balabadu Sena, something like that.
Yeah, there's Bodhu Balasena.
Bodhu
Balasena. It's a Buddhist movement.
Uh-huh.
They are also like Shiv Senai, trying to defend the Buddhist interests against Muslims, not against Hindus.
And what's the Hindu interest?
Hindu interest and Bodhu Balasena interest are running parallel now.
Quite similar.
They are in the same track. We are on the same track. Our problem for the Bodhu Balasena, the major problem is from the Muslims. For us, the major problem is from the Muslims and the Christians and the Buddhists.
That was the Tamilian Hindus are like in a Chakrabuha of Abhimanyu.
Right.
But unlike Abhimanyu, they have to emerge victorious this time, isn't it?
No, we have lost the war. The war was thrust on us. We were called terrorists. And then we lost the war. The Hindus actually, and the Christians and the Mohammedans made use of the war situation to increase their influence, increase their...
So, are you speaking of this LTT versus government, the war?
It was a war. The government said that, and at the end of the war, government said we won the war. So and I'm not saying it's a war. The government.
The government's version. And so, do you think that the LTT's destruction, or say it's a weakness, or what shall I say? How can I use this term? Well, the death of Prabhakaran and the subsequent disbanding of LTT has ruined the Hindus most in Sri Lanka.
It has worsened the situation for Hindus. I am telling you. Hindus in Sri Lanka began the target of attack of Buddhists, Muslims and the Christians in the late 50s in a serious manner. The first incident which provoked the arrival of Prabhakaran on the scene is the burning of a Hindu priest inside the sanctorum of the temple, of a Hindu temple. They burnt alive a Hindu priest by pouring kerosene in 1958.
Okay.
That was the beginning of Prabhakaran. Prabhakaran, I mean the resistance movement, Hindu resistance movement. It's a Hindu temple, it was a Hindu priest. So he was burnt alive. Prabhakaran could not digest that. Not only Prabhakaran, hundreds of young people could not digest that. But they remained calm. Their elders were asking them to remain calm. But subsequent events, both by the Abrahamists as well as the Buddhists, made the Hindu youth rise against to protect Hindu interests. To portray Prabhakaran as Christian is a wrong portrayal. He is a Hindu. He was a Hindu. His grandfather built a beautiful Shiva temple in his village out of his own earnings.
That Prabhakaran is no Christian person.
No.
No, he has been termed in the Indian media at many places that he was nothing but a Christian missionary product and everything.
That is the
wrong portrayal.
It's a wrong perception. He is basically from a Hindu family, not only a Hindu family, a family which constructed a Shiva temple and it was in the temple of the immediate relatives of Prabhakaran that priest was burnt in the south of Sri Lanka.